Hello and welcome, everyone. So I'm interviewing Agent Tam, and we'll hear more about him. Just to give you a bit of background, he is the regional director of Faith Tech, and this is a global tech community for Christ. They exist to help people in the tech ecosystem find community and steward their skills to glorify God. Welcome, Adrian. We're so happy to have you here today at the conference. Where are you joining us from?
So I'm actually from Sydney, Australia, obviously. I would have loved to be there in person, but right now, I think when you're watching this, I'm actually on the plane, I think, somewhere to Hawaii, actually, of all places. So suffering for the Lord, clearly,
Oh,
but
wow.
I would have loved to be with you all in person.
Awesome. Hawaii. What are you doing in Hawaii?
Yeah, it's part conference and then part holiday as well. So I'm
Okay.
going to a global summit for a humanitarian organization called a Convoy of Hope.
Mhm.
So that's happening there, but it's actually my anniversary as well. My wife and I, so we went a little bit earlier and have a few days to ourselves before the conference. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's lovely. Awesome. So, to start, I guess it would be nice to sort of start with how we met. So, I have a
Mm.
God story about how we met. So the morning, I've been asking God around this conference and if he wants us to do it or not, and going back and forth for a few days. And the morning that I decided, okay, I think this is God saying yes. So that
Mhm.
morning, I actually spoke to my prayer partner, so she's a witness. And then that night was food for thought meeting, and then that's when John introduced us. So, and then you gave me your playbook, which is exactly what we're doing in Asuna. And I thought,
Mhm.
wow,
Mhm.
Lord, thank you for this confirmation. And yeah, so I don't know if you have a God story around it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I'll probably share more about my the journey of how I ended up into faith tech. But the whole thing's a bit of a God story, to be honest. Funnily enough, I will out myself right now. I have no background in tech at all. And yet I find myself, leading faith tech in Oceania, which is quite
Mhm.
fascinating. But I think it's actually a pattern and a theme I've picked up a lot recently, and a lot of the conversations I've been having with, Christians and leaders, all around the world, but certainly around Australia, that there's a lot of, repositioning happening. People that once were, really focused on one particular industry or domain, God's kind of plucked them out of there, and they find themselves in a totally different area that they have no experience in, but somehow God's, opening doors and allowing, I think, different spaces to start converging. I think that's the other thing I've noticed as well.
Mm,
Uh, and certainly that's a big part of what we do at Faith Tech. Obviously the faith, Christian faith and the tech worlds previously, have nothing to do with each other, but we're
yeah,
really trying to build bridges between those.
yeah. One of my friends said, "Tell God your plans and hear Him laugh," and
Yes,
I love that because obviously we pray and we think our career is going to go a certain way, and we plan
right.
and strategize, and then we probably end up in an unexpected place anyway,
Yes,
but
that's
more
right.
than we could imagine, right? Because that's
Mm,
just how good God is.
mm,
So, yeah, so tell us a little bit more about that journey, that career journey to where you are. And I know when I share with my friends around how I, started a sooner group
mhm.
and also working in, Christian charity, they're like, wow, how did you plan it? Like you're working for the
Yes,
Lord, like you're literally being paid to work for the Lord. Like what did you
right,
do? And it's often nothing that I can attribute to myself, obviously.
right, right.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in quite a academic environment. And so from a pretty young age, I was set on becoming a lawyer. That's what I wanted to do. So yeah, went through high school and then got the marks to get into a double degree, commerce and law. So I studied at university for 5 years and yeah, during that time, I did a number of internships at kind of Big Four consulting, mainly. But interestingly, it was during my university years that I also really started to get involved in ministry, in all, Christian ministry in all different forms. So, volunteering at my local church in the youth group, doing campus ministry, doing kind of more combined youth evangelism, lots of different things. Started preaching here and there, and whilst my career was starting to take off and different opportunities opening there, at the same time my heart for ministry really started to grow as well. And so by the time I finished university, in some ways quite inconveniently, I realized actually I don't want to work in law. I actually want to pursue full-time pastoral ministry. And so I did end up working in corporate tax for about 2 years, so not long at all. But then after that, I resigned, and I remember my director at the time had no idea what I was doing. He just had no paradigm for. So are you becoming a Catholic priest? Like, what's going on? He didn't really understand what and why I was doing what
Mm,
I was.
mm,
But I resigned from that job, and then I was offered a full-time role as a youth and young adults pastor at a local church. And that kind of started my journey in vocational ministry, leading, pastoring in different churches. And then kind of fast forward more recently, after having worked in churches for about 10 years or so, um, for a number of different reasons, part of it to do with COVID, part to do with other, personal things that took place. But I find myself then realizing, actually, I still love God. Obviously, I still love the church, but there was an appetite in me that was growing to kind of see what is God doing outside the four walls of the church. So that kind of led me on this whole, adventure, and then somehow stumbled across the idea of, leveraging technology for ministry. I just very randomly just met different people who were, experimenting with things like AI and things like that to enhance Christian ministry, and then that kind of sucked me down this whole rabbit trail of, oh, let's unpack this more, and then I literally stumbled across faith tech on Google, and
wow,
yeah, the rest is
that's
history.
history. That's awesome. And you're original from New South Wales, eh? So you were born in
Yes.
Australia? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
that's awesome. So
Mm.
let's go into redemptive, this idea of redemptive practice or redemptive
Mm.
entrepreneurship. So what's theology got to do with faith,
Mm.
if
Yeah.
anything?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I believe that theology has to do with everything, and I don't remember who said this quite specifically, but everyone is a theologian, right? Everyone has an idea of God, who God is. Does God exist? You can be, if you're an atheist, you're still a theologian because you believe that God doesn't exist. That's a theology. And I probably the question more is not whether you have a theology, but firstly, is the theology, correct and in line with the truth? And then secondly, to what extent does your theology actually impact your practice, and your day-to-day life and decisions? And so I think when it comes to, a theology of technology, I think there's lots of different ways that you could, have that conversation. But I think what I found to be one of the most helpful and maybe fundamental ways of understanding technology from a theological lens is through the idea of God as the creator, right? Our kind of anchor Bible verse for faith tech is Ephesians 2, where it talks about how there are good works that God has prepared in advance for us to do, right? The idea being that God is the original creator, and then God has created us, human beings, uniquely in his image. And so part of being created in God's image is that just as God is the ultimate creator, we are co-creators with him. We are created by the creator to create. That's what we talk
Mm,
about, at Faith Tech. And so technology is really a vehicle, a means of creation, creating things, creating solutions to problems, creating tools, and to make life easier and smoother. And so it's a way of actually outworking, or it can be a way of outworking our identity
Mm,
as co-creators with God.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. And I was going through the Faith Tech Playbook,
Mm,
and there's a quote that I love, and it said how talks about how tech is no longer viewed as an industry, but a societal operating system influencing
mm,
all cultural arenas, radically reshaping individuals and realigning tribes, and all
mm,
that's happening at an unprecedented level and pace. So, how should Christians think of tech? What's the right
mm.
theology? And I'm also curious about your opinion on AI.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Lots there. I think firstly, it's definitely true that technology, whilst it is a particular industry, like you said, like you quoted from the playbook, it is the operating system of our time in the sense that, you know, you can insert any word, before tech, whether it's fintech, medtech, prop tech, faith tech, obviously it's like everything and everyone is thinking about how do we leverage technology to make whatever we do or whatever we're passionate about, better, more efficient, smoother. And so, whilst we have a particular focus on the tech industry, more and more I'm realizing, and all of us are realizing that technology, you can't escape it. And so that's why I think the work that we're doing in this realm actually has a disproportionate impact on the world and on our lives. In terms of how should a Christian think about technology, I think the important thing to think through is that, you can, as with many things, you can swing from one extreme to the other, right? So on the one hand, some people can be, so fearful or anti-technology, thinking that, new things are bad. New things means, more possibility for evil and to do harm. And actually, the answer is we need to go back to, a more traditional way of life, more traditional era. So technology is evil and bad and avoided at all costs. And then, of course, the opposite extreme is let's just adopt everything, every new technology. Let's just, dive into it without thinking through the implications and really discerning and weighing the pros and cons. I think the answer or the more biblical, I think, approach is that technology in and of itself is morally neutral. The question is, what happens when it can be used as a force for good and it can also be used as a force for evil? And my understanding of, the Christian worldview is that, because we, as Christians, we have been, reconciled to God, we now have the Holy Spirit living on the inside of us. And part of our mandate is actually to redeem what is broken and to restore it back to God's original design. So it's the same with technology. Yes, it can be used for profound harm and evil, but if it's placed in the hands of God-fearing, God-loving people, we can actually see good come out of it. So that's how I would think about it. Yeah.
That's awesome. And the playbook talks about the extremes of reckless and then on the other hand redemptive. So there's
Mm,
reckless or responsible and then redemptive tech. So if we
mm,
zoom into redemptive technology,
yeah.
there's this idea that there's a way to build technology redemptively that
Mm,
changes the world while transforming those who build it. And I
yes.
take that quote from the playbook as well. So to make it a bit more practical for, say, a developer on a Monday morning, what's building redemptively? How can they think about the work they do that can sort of help them to get their mindset right to build redemptively?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, the framework that you referred to, is really helpful in thinking through this because, we talk about there's the reckless approach, responsible, and then redemptive. So, reckless is, it's move fast, break things. I think it was Mark Zuckerberg who kind of coined that phrase. It's, let's just disrupt the industry. Don't worry about the collateral or the impact. We're here to dominate and to win, regardless of the implications. So obviously, I think more and more people now are realizing actually that's not a helpful way, to build technology. There's more awareness now about things like, corporate social responsibility and all that kind of thing. And
Mm,
so that's the second way. So that if that's reckless, then the responsible way is, okay, let's take into account ethics, values, wider societal implications, and all of that, which is
mm,
really good and I think helpful. But I think the Christian approach actually takes it one step further. And it's not just about advancing human flourishing, but it's actually taking on the posture of a servant. So
mm,
Jesus came not to be served, but to serve, right? To give his life as a ransom for many. And in the same way, we love and lead just like Jesus did. And so when it comes to technology, building redemptively means that we actually, we invert the world's way of doing things. It's not just about, certainly not about causing harm, and it's also not just about minimizing harm, but it's actually to move into the areas of brokenness, darkness, where there's disrepair, and through laying down our lives, through sacrifice, then we see others, win. And I think a big part of the redemptive, technology approach is actually through viewing people as image bearers of God. They're not just there as commodities. They're not just there to serve our agenda or to build our thing. It's like we know that everyone carries the imprint and the fingerprint of God in their life. And so how do we, through the work that we do, actually uh, unveil that and reveal that more and more? And so yeah, we view technology as a tool. It's a way of advancing love and to bring God's kingdom to earth. So
that's amazing. I just love how you know, it really bridges that faith and work gap for a Christian. Because
mhm.
I think even for me, and even starting this journey of redemptive entrepreneurship, you find yourself, yeah, you're so disconnected from your faith
Mm.
in your work. And I think this is a beautiful way to bridge that gap. So tell us about some of the projects I saw on your website. You're involved in so many projects all around the world.
Mm.
Tell us some of your, maybe a couple of your favorite projects, and maybe highlight that redemptive angle, like that evidence of the redemptive approach in within those
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah, for sure. What I think one of the things you referred to earlier, Faye, when you read out the quote from the playbook is, we want to build redemptive technology so that output is really important. But actually, just as important, if not more important, is actually the process of how we build. And so we actually view the way that we build as kind of it's part of discipleship. We lead people, we have a framework that we lead people through as they're building technology, that focuses on connecting with one another, hearing God together, even incorporating things like lament into a product development cycle. So it's quite unique in the sense that you probably wouldn't think about those two things going hand in hand. But yeah, just to say, the things that are being built are really inspiring and really redemptive, but also to emphasize that there's a way you can actually build redemptive products in an unredemptive way, which we don't want. And so the process is as important as the products. But certainly, as far as some of the great things that have happened around the world, so in Australia, everything's very new, so we don't have any projects we can point to just yet in Australia. Where we're at in for FaithTech Australia, we're gathering people now. We've got communities being established. People are starting to meet one another, but we're not at the stage of actually deploying anything just yet. That's kind of all in the works, but certainly from a global perspective, some of the things that I really loved, one that you can, see on our YouTube channel, um, I think yeah, three guys in Canada in one of the faith tech communities there, they all realized that they had a shared passion for ending sex trafficking, which I know you're really passionate about as well through your work with Destiny Rescue. And so they actually developed an AI chatbot that intercepts sex buyers at the point of demand. And so they would kind of list these anonymous, listings on these websites where people are purchasing sex services. And then they would start conversations with, primarily men, and actually start to educate them as to, like, why are you looking for this? What is it that you're actually searching for? And they have so many examples of where, they've stopped transactions as, as they were in the process of happening. and then led people to faith and all that kind of thing. So that's we talked earlier about going straight to the point of darkness where people are really lost and searching, and that's a really great example of that. And another example was a little bit different is, there was a project called Digital Sabbath. I think that the website is still active. I think it's digitalsabbath.io potentially. And basically it was kind of out of a realization that, you can really be, addicted to technology, really a slave to the devices that you use. And so it was kind of a website that was set up where you can, put your name down to essentially go on a Sabbath from technology. You enter in your details, and then kind of through that nominated time period, you'd be sent certain resources that you could access, and kind of you're leading people through this journey of almost like a technological detox, whilst bringing God into that, equation. So there's so many different examples, and we've also partnered with lots of organizations as well, groups like Alpha and the Billy Graham Association, overseas mission kind of things, and lots of different examples. But we're really keen and eager to see some homegrown Australian projects being launched in the coming months and years. So
Yeah, it's so exciting. And for the technologists among us, how can they get involved in what Faith Tech is doing in Australia and
mhm.
globally? Yeah,
Yeah.
what's the call to action for them?
Yeah, for sure. I think certainly the concrete, call to action is if you go to our website, faithtech.com, you'll see on there, so Oceania is the region that we're in, and you'll see some of the cities where we're now up and running. So we've got a Faith Tech community in Sydney, one in Brisbane, one in Adelaide, and Melbourne is just about to go live, which I know is where you are at the moment. So yeah, if you check out some of the details there, and you can fill out an expression of interest form, even if you're not in any of those cities, by the way, we often have people reaching out to us from our website and say, "Hey, I love the Faith Tech vision. I'd love to be a part of something in my city when it starts," and so that would be really helpful for us to know. And yeah, so you can fill out the form there and put down your details, and as we start to launch more and more communities, we'd love to have have you get involved. But the other thing I would say, as far as a call to action, and this is less about, pushing the faith tech agenda, is I think the thing that I really want people, Christians in particular, to think about when it comes to technology is actually just to have some courage and to give things a go. Like I think sometimes, the Christian uh, worldview can lead us to we can be a bit defensive, or we're on the back foot, or we're scared, or we have to conserve and protect, which I think is not a bad thing to do. But God has given us Jesus has given us a commission. We are to go into all the world. And so I know many of you watching this, you have skills, qualifications, experiences, resources at your disposal. And sometimes we can be afraid of, doing the wrong thing or making a mistake. But I think we all need a bit of, Peter's audacity, just kind of step out onto the water, try something, and if you drown, Jesus will pull you up. It's okay. But we actually need more courageous Christians in technology willing to give it a go. I don't know. Can I share this quote from, I've got a quote here from Andy Crouch, um,
Absolutely.
who is from Praxis, which I know, Faye, you've got some connection to as well. And this is what he says, Andy Crouch. He says, why aren't we known as creators? He's talking to Christians. People who dare to think and do something that has never been thought or done before, something that makes the world more welcoming and thrilling and beautiful. And I just saw that that's a really compelling call to action. Like we don't have to just react to what the world's doing. We can actually be on the front foot and bring the best and most beautiful things into the world. And I think through technology is a big part of that.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thanks, Adrian. So that's Adrian Tam. He's the regional manager of Oceania, establishing and providing leadership for a growing number of city-based communities in our region that love Jesus and love technology. Thank you so much, Adrian.
Thanks, Faye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.